It's an ordinary evening. You're walking home from the station. A police officer steps in front of you and says,
すみません、ちょっといいですか?
"Excuse me, do you have a moment?" And in that second, one question goes through almost every foreign resident's mind. Can I just say no? Here's the problem with that question. It doesn't have one answer. Not because Japanese law is vague. Because being stopped by the police is not one thing. It's 5 different things. And they do not all have the same legal answer. Get it wrong in one direction, and you agree to something you never had to agree to. Get it wrong in the other direction, and you refuse something you are legally required to do. That second mistake is a criminal offense. So the useful question is not, can I refuse? The useful question is, which of the 5 situations am I actually in? This is how Japan works. Here, we explain the rules, systems, and everyday realities that shape life in Japan. In the next few minutes, you'll get all 5 situations, what Japanese courts have actually decided about each one, and 3 short Japanese sentences you can use in a real encounter. Let's start with the first question. Why can the police stop you at all? Japan has a law called the Police Duties Execution Act. Under Article 2, a police officer can stop and question someone when the circumstances give reasonable grounds to suspect that the person has committed a crime, is about to commit one, or knows something about one. That wording matters. The law does not say, you look unusual, so police can do whatever they want. There has to be a reason connected to the circumstances. Now, the same law allows an officer to ask a person to come to a nearby police box or police station. Notice the word, ask. The law also states that, unless a separate legal procedure applies, a person cannot be detained, taken to a police station against their will, or forced to answer questions under this provision. So being questioned is not being arrested. Being asked to come to the police box is not being arrested either. Which brings us to the question everyone actually wants answered. Can you just walk away? Legally, in a purely voluntary encounter, there is no obligation to answer questions or to follow an officer to a police box. But no obligation and nothing will happen are not the same sentence. Japanese courts have repeatedly had to decide where voluntary questioning ends and unlawful coercion begins. And their answer is not a simple line. Courts have accepted that an officer may, in some circumstances, take limited action to stop a person from leaving immediately. Courts have also found that police went too far. There are cases where a person was taken to a police station, in circumstances where the court concluded that genuine consent to accompany the police had never been established. In one such case, the court also found the later search of that person's belongings unlawful. That tells you something important. The label the police use is not the only thing that matters. Calling something voluntary does not automatically make every action lawful. Courts look at what actually happened. Did the person genuinely agree? How strong was the suspicion? What did the officers physically do? How necessary was it? So the honest answer to, can I walk away, is usually yes in law, but the encounter may not end the moment you decide it ends. And for a lot of people watching this, that isn't a hypothetical. A survey published by the Tokyo Bar Association collected 2,094 valid responses from people with foreign roots living in Japan. In that survey, 62.9% said they had experienced police questioning in roughly the previous 5 years. Among those who had been questioned, 72.7% said it had happened more than once. 22.3% reported 6 or more encounters, and 70.3% said they had experienced police questions or behavior that made them feel uncomfortable. Those numbers are significant. They also need to be described accurately. This was a survey of respondents with foreign roots who chose to answer. It is not a random national sample, proving that 62.9% of every foreign resident in Japan will be stopped. What it does show is that repeated questioning is a real and widely reported experience. What it cannot show by itself is the reason behind any individual stop. That question is currently being argued in Japan. People with foreign roots have brought litigation claiming they were stopped because of their appearance or ethnicity. Police and government defendants have disputed that there is any systematic policy of stopping people simply for looking foreign. That dispute is unresolved. What you can control is knowing which legal category you're standing in. So let's go to the situation that causes the most confusion. The bag. An officer asks, "Can I see inside your bag? Do you have to open it?" Here, most advice gets this half right, and half right is dangerous. The starting point is clear. Inspecting your belongings during questioning is, in principle, done with your consent and only within the limits of that consent. There are court cases where officers went through someone's belongings without genuine consent, and the courts held that unlawful. But the Supreme Court has also held the other half. Conduct that falls short of an actual search may be permitted even without consent, as long as it is not coercive, and only where it is judged reasonable in the specific situation, weighing the necessity, the urgency, and the interests on both sides. In the leading case, officers opened the zip of an unlocked bag and looked in during a serious armed robbery investigation. The court treated that as short of a search and allowed it. So it is not true that police can freely go through your bag, and it is not true that nothing can ever happen without your consent. It depends on how far they go and how serious the situation is. There's one more piece people miss. Refusing a voluntary inspection does not mean you can never be searched. If the legal requirements are met, police can apply for a warrant. The National Police Agency has published examples where a person refused voluntary procedures. Police then obtained a warrant, and the matter moved to a compulsory search. So these two sentences are completely different. I don't consent to a voluntary search, and the police can never legally search me. The first is a legal position. The second is just wrong. Now the layer that changes the answer for foreign residents. Residence documents. You may hear this online. If police questioning is voluntary, I don't have to show them anything. That is too broad, and it can cost you. Japan's immigration law creates a separate obligation, and it is not voluntary. Under Article 23 of the Immigration Control Act, mid to long-term residents must carry their residence card at all times. And when an authorized official, including a police officer, asks to see it, you must present it. Not carrying it can mean a fine of up to 200,000 yen. Refusing to present it can mean up to 1 year of imprisonment or a fine of up to 200,000 yen. There are exceptions you should know. Residents under 16 are not required to carry the card. Special permanent residents do not have a constant carrying obligation for their certificate, and people without a residence card, such as short-term visitors, generally carry a passport instead. So here is the practical line. Do I have to answer every question, and do I have to show my residence card? Are two completely separate questions. The first is usually voluntary. The second usually isn't. Which is why just refuse everything is genuinely bad advice. Now the 3 sentences. These are short, they're polite, and each one tells you which situation you're in. 1.
これは任意ですか?
Is this voluntary? 2.
帰ってもいいですか?
Am I free to go? 3.
令状はありますか?
Do you have a warrant? Say them calmly as questions, not as a challenge. The point isn't to win an argument on the street. The point is that the answers tell you which of the 5 situations you're in. So here they are. Situation 1. An officer asks where you're going. That's questioning, in principle voluntary. Situation 2. The officer asks you to come to the police box. That's accompaniment, also in principle voluntary and where courts have drawn the hardest lines. Situation 3. The officer asks to look inside your bag. That's inspection of belongings. Consent is the starting point, but limited conduct short of a search can be allowed. Situation 4. The officer asks a foreign resident for legally required residence documentation. That's a separate duty under immigration law, not voluntary. Situation 5. The officer presents a warrant. You're no longer in voluntary territory at all. All 5 of these feel identical while they're happening. The police stopped me. Legally, they are not the same, and the word refuse means something different in each one. If a situation becomes serious, if you believe you're being detained, or if you're unsure of your obligations, professional legal advice may be necessary. And decide now, tonight, what documentation you're legally required to carry. Do not find that out while standing in front of a police officer. So, back to that evening walk home. Can you refuse a police officer in Japan? Sometimes. Questioning and voluntary accompaniment are not arrest. What you can refuse depends entirely on what you're being asked to do. And if you're a foreign resident, some of it was never voluntary in the first place. That's the distinction worth remembering. As of 2026, this video is based on official information and court materials available at the time of research. Rules and their application can change, so always check the latest information from the National Police Agency, the Immigration Services Agency of Japan, or a qualified legal professional when necessary. The official sources used in this video are linked in the description.